The industry is finally changing. The industry is finally changing. So a while back, I made a couple of videos talking about how things sometimes have to be worse before they can become better, and how the games industry is going through so much pain, so much suffering right now that it was hard to start to see the light at the end of the tunnel. And after going to Gamescom, coming back, having lots of meetings, and after seeing where things are right now in the games industry, there's lots of bad news, but there's also a glimpse of hope in the future. So in this video, I'd like to talk to you guys about exactly that, and hopefully you guys can correlate and understand and connect with some of the things that I'm going to say next, because I do think that this is the signs of things to come going forward, and I think we're going to be in a great place. Let's do it. Hey, welcome to another video, and I'm going to talk in this video, as usual, from a developer's perspective. If you're new here, my name is Harvey Newman. I've been in the games industry for 20 plus years, and even though a lot of the news out there, 100% are negative nowadays, but I like to talk about the positive and the negative. And I would like to actually specifically talk about the changes that I've seen this year in Gamescom, because I went earlier this year to GDC. Check out that video if you haven't. And I noticed a change, but it was not significant. But at this year's Gamescom, 100% is a significant change, and is for a number of different reasons. Number one, I started a company called Proxima, games company, and we're working on this game called Warship Jolly Roger. Now, we always believed in single player games, and I always thought that the only constant in the games industry is that single player games sell. If you think about it, this whole thing started with single player games, and single player are not going anywhere. They are always going to be here. But what I've noticed, especially these last few months, is that there's been a massive shift on the sentiment with multiplayer games and then the sentiment with single player games. And it's funny though, because you can feel it. I felt like it's not like we were right or wrong, because I don't think there's a right or wrong. I mean, both things can be true, but at least from our beliefs, we felt like we strongly believed that this is what the market was saying. And then two games came out very close to each other, which was Black Myth Wukong and also Concord. They came out very close to each other. Now, I'm never ever happy about like studios failing, people getting laid off and all that stuff, because that stuff sucks. I've been part of it many times and it's absolutely horrible. However, I'm comparing these two games mostly to say that I think there's fatigue when it comes to multiplayer, and I've mentioned it here in these videos before, and now it's kind of clear that I think that a specific type of multiplayer game specifically, there's fatigue for these type of games, and then there's a lot of wants for a game that very much it's no bullshit, no, just a good concise game that basically on release, on day one, when you play it, everything is there and is solid, and there's not a lot of bugs and there's not a lot of updates. You just buy the game, you play the game, you finish the game, and you feel like a badass because you finished the game. Such were the times back in the day, at least when I was little, or I was younger, playing games. And I think that most players nowadays want to come back to that time. And that was the feeling that I had before. And this is basically what this, not experiment, but this thing that happened at the end of August, kind of proved to me that there's a new appetite for single player games now more than ever. It needs to be high quality games, obviously, but there's definitely an appetite. Elden Ring was there, absolutely killed it. Same thing with Larian Studios last year. And I think this is another sign of what things are to be in the future. Now, that's the first thing that I've noticed this year at Gamescom. Also, walking around and Gamescom, seeing the booths, seeing the games, I think that's a renewed interest, especially from the indie studios like ourselves, of creating something unique, creating something single player, creating something that you can basically sit down and enjoy. I don't see as much of multiplayer everything as I used to, and that's a beautiful thing to see, because I do think that there needs to be some type of balance between the two. I don't think that it's either or kind of situation. I do think that there's a place for multiplayer and there's a place for single player. And I think the market has been pushing so hard that everything multiplayer for the last maybe 5 to 10 years, that I think we got to this point right now where people are super tired of multiplayer games copying each other quite a bit. So that's the first thing that I saw when it comes to like the market shift. The second thing that I saw recently is how indie developers are communicating with their fans. Another thing that I mentioned here previously was about the power of community and how you should appreciate your community. And I learned a lot of it from my time in Star Wars Battlefront, because the game went from being, the malice of the world, the most horrible thing ever, to then being like a game beloved by the Reddit community, to be beloved by anybody that played it, and considered nowadays one of the best multiplayer games of Star Wars, which I'm really proud of for sure. But that was basically us developers really kind of like hammering on that game to make sure that the game was the best possible it could be, and also kind of like making true the promises that we actually made, and also making sure that we felt the same way that players felt when it comes to frustrations, not only with development but also with publishing. So we had a little small window of opportunity that everybody kind of left us alone, and we just did our thing, and it worked out, and it was amazing. And it kind of like showed me that community is really important, and players and developers want the same thing. And sometimes it feels like both sections, both groups are kind of fighting each other quite a lot of time, while both people want the same thing. Gamers want a good game and developers want to develop a good game. And this is independently of how the game is perceived by the world. Some games might be shit according to certain people, and some games might be absolutely amazing according to most people. But independently of the delta between the two, the developers actually always wanted to make a good game. It's just things change a lot for a number of reasons while you're developing that game. But it's really cool to see when the synergy of both parties actually connect, and then the players and fans are actually given like constructive feedback, and then the developers are listening and actually making differences and updating the game and making sure that it's better. It's beautiful, and I was addicted to that. After that, I think most people that actually worked in that game, and there was about 70 of us, there was not many of us, everybody that worked on that specific team for that period of time, was a couple of years or so, was very addicted to that feeling, because it felt absolutely amazing. Not only the team worked well, but also the community worked well. And I think this is where indie developers and AA developers like ourselves at Proxima actually are going towards. And the best example that I found so far is this game by Dog Studios called Forever Winter. And I just saw a video released a couple of days ago maybe. They have a video called Declaration of War. Go and check it out if you haven't. But I think is the biggest differentiator that I've ever seen of a development update or a dev update, because normally for the last few years, if you think about it, most dev updates, dev logs, whatever you want to call it, they're normally very manicured, normally because, not to demonize the publishers at all, but normally because publishers want those things to be very well worded and planned out, and what I'm going to show this but not this, and This devlog was all about the players and all about respecting the players, respecting the community. We'll make sure that this game doesn't go above $50. We'll make sure that we actually kind of like don't disappoint. We appreciate your input in the game. We'll appreciate your feedback. The game is better because of this. Join us so we can make the game together better, and so on and so forth. And I think that's exactly where the industry needs to go next. And to me, it shows that that is the future of the industry. Not only that there needs to be an equilibrium between multiplayer and single player, but also that us as developers need to listen to a community and pay close attention, right? And if you pay close attention and you respect the community and the community respects you back, and we build this game together, right? The game actually becomes better, the developers become better, the community becomes better, and everybody wins. And that is beautiful to me. I've seen it already in action. I saw a preview, and this is why I was addicted to it. I mentioned it in this channel for so many times already. But seeing how the industry is morphing into this place where, like, this is exactly where we need to be, I think is a beautiful thing. And to me, it's the beginning of the change that I'll hope to see. And I think if as long as we actually keep going this way, I think publishers will eventually change their minds and change their ways of being. And instead of chasing money as they normally do, which is a business, it makes sense, I think they will start paying attention to the developer. They'll start paying attention to the people behind the game, and they will actually fund the studios that are genuinely passionate about the product. Now, last thing, at Gamescom, I've never seen so many booths being not only reserved and planned out and absolutely amazing from independent developers that actually are going to self-publish. It's very interesting to see. A few years back, 2009 or so, when I went to Gamescom, I saw that most booths were actually pretty much taken by all AAA developers. It was very rare to actually see like smaller developers actually having a booth because it costs a lot of money and all these other things. So you always had to be attached with somebody in order to have like something super amazing. At this Gamescom, I saw so many beautiful, huge booths that people showcasing their game and stuff that looks AAA. It looks absolutely amazing. And he was a AA developer or was an indie developer that actually put it together. And when you ask who's your publisher, nobody. We are self-publishing. Who's your publisher? Nobody. We are self-publishing. This belief on self-publishing, I think, is becoming a thing now. And I think it might actually go really far with Steam, because Steam, as always, is the great equalizer for most developers. And I love Steam because of this. And I do think that with Steam and people actually kind of like self-developing more and more and more, it kind of like takes a little bit away of how things have been so far. Kind of reminds me, and I don't know if you guys remember this, but it kind of reminds me of the Nokia days. Do you guys remember the Nokia? Nokia used to dominate everything. Samsung and everybody, they tried their best and stuff, but Nokia dominated everything. And they used to say to absolutely everybody, including the game makers and the operators and the networks and everybody, how they had to run their business because they were the big boss. And fast forward to today with Apple and apps and things like that, and all of a sudden it's the app developers that are calling the shots, right? I mean, obviously Apple because they make the iPhone, but it's the app developers that actually, the Angry Birds or, any other big app that makes it big, all of a sudden all the, they want it everywhere, right? So the power is on the content creation that then goes into a platform. And I think games have always been this way. Nintendo have been selling games to sell platforms for ages. They sold Super Mario 3 with the Super Nintendo and Super Mario with the NES and things like that. So the content and the games are the ones that actually move the consoles, right? And I think that we need to keep that in mind very, very clearly. And I think sometime along the way, I think we forgot about that. So times are good, and I think that we are heading to a better place. But going back to the beginning, I do think that we are still on things getting worse before they become better. We are still not exactly on the positive side of things. Fingers crossed, next year, 2025, we are going to be there and it's going to be amazing. And the layoffs are going to minimize. There are going to be absolutely no layoffs. That will be amazing. And yeah, we're going to be off to greener pastures. But we are definitely going to a place right now that we need to go through this pain before we get to a better place. And that was the video for today. Now, don't forget, if you are here still now, subscribe, comment below about what you think about the industry right now, what I mentioned, and how do you feel about publishers versus self-publishing. Also, I have a motion capture course that I released not long ago, a couple of weeks actually, and it has quite a lot of people, which is great. However, you should absolutely check it out. Link down below if you actually want to check it out. And if not, all good. I'll see you here next week as usual. And until then, stay well, stay safe. Peace.